What's up, everybody? Knife Craze 2.0 here with ghost stories because, hey, it's close to Halloween. I got my coffee here. I've had a few coffees today. Got my cigarette. And as you see, my cup is a Halloween cup. It's got the full moon and the haunted house and the black cat. So today's video is going to be ghost stories. Now, I have a few ghost stories, actually, and I'm going to tell you all of them. I'm going to keep it short and simple and sweet, but I'm going to try and cover as much as I can at the same time. So, years ago, when I was a child, I was living in my old house back in Hamilton, Ontario. I lived in a housing complex of townhouses. It was pretty much up in the country. I mean, we had a police station beside us that was built later on. We had a YMCA that was built later on, a skate park. And before all that was there, we had baseball diamonds. And if you went all the way up the road to the last baseball diamond, you'd be up on the country roads. Farmland, farmhouses, barns. Anyway, this townhouse complex I lived in, it was pretty old. The houses were built in about the 1980s, maybe early 1990s. But the land that it was built on was even older. And we have plenty of experiences to talk about when it comes to this house. The first one I'm going to talk about is called Old Lady Screams in the Night. So one night, middle of the night, I'm lying awake in bed, totally mentally disturbed by the sounds and the feelings and the emotions that carry throughout the house. And as I'm trying to sleep, my head underneath the blanket as I normally would, because there was something about this house that just wouldn't let me sleep at night. Everybody's asleep, middle of the night, nobody outside, nobody awake in our house, nobody around. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, out of complete zero context, with no warning whatsoever, I hear the voice of a haggard old woman scream out my mother's name. Glory! It was so loud. It sounded like it was coming straight from our upstairs hallway. Nobody was awake. Nobody who knew my mother's name, besides us, was in the house. Who was it? Who said her name? Was it my grandmother, who passed away on my birthday? Was it a spirit of somebody who used to live in the house? Or from somebody who used to live on that land a long time ago? And how did they know my mother's name? To this day, it's a complete mystery. But it shook me to my core nonetheless, and I got zero sleep that night. Here's another story for you. And now this ain't my experience. This one is what my mom experienced. Me and my brother are asleep one night in our house in Hamilton, the one I just talked about. And she's sitting in the living room in a reclining chair watching TV, as she normally would do after me and my brother went to sleep and she had some time to herself. And she got the most terrifying feeling, a feeling of fear and danger coming from behind her. She turned around, and behind her chair, was a very tall, very big and strong presence. She didn't see him, but you know, if you're one of those people who are open and perceptive to paranormal happenings, you'll know what I'm talking about. But she got this sensation, this feeling that there was a large brute of a man standing behind her, yelling at her, screaming at her, angry because she was there. Was this another spirit of somebody who used to live on the land? Maybe the complex was built on an Indian burial ground. Who knows? For our third story, this is from my own experience. One night I had a dream, and I didn't really understand it at the time, but I do now. They say when you dream, sometimes your soul can leave your body and go off to different places. Well, I think one night, again at the house in Hamilton, up near the country, I think my soul did just that. It was like I had an out-of-body experience. I was asleep, but at the same time completely awake. I went downstairs from my bedroom. Then I went down to the basement. The basement had a lot of activity. When I looked over towards our pantry, I saw two people, a man and a woman, dressed in 1700s typical farmer type clothing. The woman was dressed in one of those long old-timey dresses. The man was dressed in some type of old-timey formal wear. And they looked dead center into my soul. And the one thing that was strange about them is that they were blue. Like, not just their clothing, their face, and the aura and light around them was blue. I never understood what it meant at the time. And to this day, I still don't know who those people are. But they were there. After that day, that night when I had that dream, that out-of-body experience, I never set foot in that basement alone again. Another story from the Hamilton house. My mother was in the basement doing laundry one day. She felt something behind her underneath the stairs where we typically stored stuff such as kids' ride-on cars, like the Little Tykes Cozy Coupe. We had a couple of those. We had some ride-on 4x4s. We were kids at the time. We also stored like Halloween decorations underneath the stairs. But my mom felt this presence coming from there. And when she turned around, she saw and felt an overriding sense of dread. And there was a figure, a complete black mass underneath those stairs. It didn't have any features. It was just a black mass, kind of like a mist. And it was there, staring at her. Now we're moving on to Burlington, Ontario. When I lived in Burlington, Ontario, it was close to Christmas a few years back. Me and my mom were going to a Christmas dinner at a small French church in Burlington. We had some time before the dinner started, so we walked along Spencer Smith Park. Then we took a shortcut through a grassy area, and finally we came to the old St. Luke's Pioneer Church. And as we're walking along the sidewalk in the pitch black night through the graveyard, I saw it. My mother didn't. A crisp black shadow figure, about 5'10" to 6 feet tall. It appeared that whoever this was dressed in pioneer clothing. They were slightly hunched over, and they were walking directly towards me and my mother. As our paths crossed, the shadow figure disappeared. I immediately turned around and said to my mother, "Where did that person go?" And she says, "I didn't see anybody." She had no recollection of this figure. I turned around and looked behind me. I looked all around the churchyard, the graveyard. I called out, "Is anybody else here?" There was nobody but us. On each side of the graveyard and churchyard, there were 7-foot tall privacy fences protecting private housing. There's no way this person who appeared quite old and how would you describe it? There's no way that this person who appeared quite old, hunched over, and frail would be able to climb a 7-foot tall chain link fence. So, to this day, I'm convinced that when I walked through that cemetery, past the pioneer plot of the founding fathers of Burlington, I saw the ghost of a pioneer. My mother didn't see it. Nobody else was there. I'm the only one that had experienced this. And some of you might be saying, well, you could have been high or drunk at the time. You could have been having a mental hysteria, episode. No. At this time, I didn't smoke anything. I didn't drink anything. I wasn't even on prescription medication. What I saw, what manifested before me, was completely out of thin air. There was nothing in my body or system that could have altered my state of mind to make me imagine this. The next story I'm going to tell you is not so much a ghost story, but an out-of-body, transcendental, spiritual experience. My father, whom I love very much, sadly passed away on November 24th, 2017, of metastatic lung cancer. I didn't even know he died until November 31st, beginning of December, when the police called us after trying several phone numbers to contact us with. The chief of police said to us, "I need to talk to Timothy Nolan's next of kin." That's my father. I'm his next of kin. I'm his firstborn son. When I got on the phone, the police told me that my father had passed away. And they said it was cancer. To this day, I'm saddened by the fact that nobody was with him at the hospital when he went to the next side. I never got a chance to say goodbye. But in some ways, the spirits of the dead find a way to come and say goodbye to us. Sometimes they stick around even longer. A year before my father died, I had a dream that my father drove down in a 1957 red Chevy Bel Air, his favorite car. He drove down from the sky, rolled down the window, and said to me, "Son, I'm moving on now. If you have any questions, if you have anything you need to know, I'll be listening." After that, just as quickly as he appeared, that car drove off into heaven. A year later, he died. It wasn't about a year or two after he died that I started to experience what I believe was his spirit. The first dream, or what I like to think was actually a transcendental spiritual trip during my comatose state. We were at a plaza, and my father appeared. We spent the time together hanging out, having a good time. I was there, my mom was there, my brother and my father was there. At the end of our time together, around when the dream ended, he said, "Son, I have to go now, and I love you." And I said, "Dad, I don't want you to go." but he went. After that, a few months passed, he came back. I had a dream where me and my brother were following somebody in disguise. I didn't know it was a disguise, but we were following this individual who attracted our attention, and we walked into an elevator that was completely out of nowhere. It wasn't even attached to a building. When we got to the elevator, this individual took off the disguise, and it was my father. He handed me and my brother a pamphlet, and he said, "Sons, I didn't really die of lung cancer. Somebody killed me." And in this pamphlet was all the information about who killed him. Thing is, I never got to read that pamphlet. The dream ended like that. My father lived a tumultuous lifestyle, and he knew people who you wouldn't want to be associated with. And ever since he died, I had a feeling that somebody must have given him a hot dose, a bad batch of some sort of drug. And that's what really killed him. So, is it really that strange that my father appeared to me, telling me that somebody offed him, murdered him, killed him? Or is it complete imagination? I'll let you decide, but I know what I think. Now, the last time I saw my dad was actually last night. It was at his old apartment building, and there wasn't really anything too interesting about it. I just saw him, and we were talking, and that was that. But a far more interesting dream I had happened a few months ago. Excuse me. All of a sudden, as if my spirit left this world and went to heaven or whatever you believe in, that space in the universe where the spirits go. I'm looking at myself in a third-person view. I'm looking at my own back, and to my right is my brother. We're in my father's old apartment, and there's a couch, and on the couch are my two dogs that passed away, one of which my dad owned, one which I owned, and there's my father. The dogs are no longer sick and frail. They're happy, their tails are wagging, and they got big smiles on their faces. My dad is no longer cancer-ridden and ill. He's standing up with a big smile on his face, back in excellent shape like he used to be. And he just looks at us and he smiles. And in that moment, in my experience, I said, I've died and went to heaven. I woke up. So I didn't really die, but I have a feeling that in that moment, my soul went somewhere. And it might sound stupid to you. It might sound absurd. But that was one of the most beautiful moments I have ever experienced in my life. So we're reaching the end of our video now, and I'm just going to talk a little bit more just to wrap things up. Over the course of my life, me and my mother, my brother not so much, but me and my mother are very receptive to paranormal occurrences. Throughout my life, in my households that I've lived in, things have disappeared and reappeared in the strangest spots. Things like keys, wallets. Lights have turned on and off when nobody has touched the switch, when the bulbs aren't burnt out. Sometimes the light has stopped working for a day, and the next day, it's on perfectly fine. Many people experience these types of things. Is it a poltergeist? I don't think so. I think it's just the way of somebody who loves you, who is no longer on this earth. It's their way of communicating with you. Anyway, guys, those are my ghost stories for you today. Halloween, we're gonna be chilling out, watching a horror movie, getting drunk, and eating candy. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, leave a nice comment. And keep in mind that not everybody has the same views on paranormal stuff like I do. You don't need to be mean in the comments and call me crazy, but share your own paranormal stories. Or if you don't believe in it, don't say anything at all. I just thought since it's close to Halloween, I'd share my experiences with you guys. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and have a happy and safe Halloween.